Welcome to interview number 17 of our exciting new series, My Dramatic Relationship with a Narc. This is interview number 17 with Amari, and she's somebody I know, in my personal life. So I'm kind of familiar. Now, of course, I don't know all the details. Everybody can tell you everything. But, I'm somewhat familiar with the details of her situation. I haven't known her that long, but, she's been making some really great strides to get herself out of this situation. What's so unusual about today's interview is that most of the ladies that we've talked to have already gotten rid of their narc. They're years past the experience. They can look on it and have all kinds of insight into it, and are very willing and able to share their hindsight views. This young lady is unfortunately right in the middle of the escape from the narc world, and so she's still living it. So I thought it'd be a good experience. I mean, it'd be good for her to be able to talk it through, and it'd be good for you to see that what's going on in someone's life as they're actually trying to get themselves out of a situation with a narcissist. So let me get Miss Amari on the show. Hi, lady. What's going on?
Hello.
Oh, I know you're scared. Come on now. You can do this. But you said when we were first talking about this that, you felt somewhat embarrassed, a little bit embarrassed by it. Why, though? Because this is who you are right now, or who you were then. So why do you feel, kind of embarrassed about it?
Because I feel like now that I know I should be done, and the fact that I'm not done yet, it feels silly. It seems silly. I know in my heart, in my head, why I'm not done. But just, I guess, thinking about what other people might think or see, and people that care about me, always ask me and never understand the answer that I give them. I know that it probably seems silly to a lot of people on why I would still be in it.
I see. So you're looking at the being judged.
Yeah. Well, even I judge myself too.
Oh.
because I do, you know better, you do better, and I feel like I know enough. I just haven't reached my point to do better, and that frustrates me, and so it makes me feel silly.
Well, let's start and talking about let's backtrack a little bit and talk about how you grew up, because from everything that we're hearing so far in all these interviews, that seems to have a lot to do with what motivated these women as they became teenagers and young adults to be attracted to these narcissists. So, can you give a little layout about your family of origin?
Well, I'm a middle child of 7, and I always played the mother role in the family. My mother was going through her own issues with my father, and he was never in the home. He was in and out of the home, but I didn't grow up with my father, there. And I saw what my mother put up with, and it would put her in depressions, and so I spent all of my adolescence from the time I was 13 till I left for college I left for college at 16, and then I came home at 20, and I picked up where I left off, just kind of playing mother. And so when my mother would lock herself in her room, I would take over downstairs, making sure everybody was doing what they were supposed to do and figuring out what we were going to eat. And yeah, I just always felt responsible for everybody in the house.
And
And
what about
it
your
wasn't
older
appreciated.
siblings? Did they
They
step
were
up at
worried
all?
about themselves. They
Oh,
no, they worried about themselves. Um, yeah, and it wasn't appreciated by any of my siblings because they're looking at me like, you not the mama. Go sit down someplace. You can't tell us what to do. And then when my mother would snap out of her funk, then she didn't appreciate what I'd been doing either. She would say, "These are my children, not yours. You remember your place and all this stuff." And I'm just like, and back then I couldn't articulate how I felt about that. It wasn't until she passed that I really realized that, you never appreciated the role that I played. You thought I was being disrespectful and, whatever, when I was stepping up and filling the role. So, yeah,
wow.
I don't know. I've always felt like I needed to be needed and wanted to be appreciated for the help that I was providing and never really got it.
I see. Okay, that's important. Okay, so with all your parents not, your dad not really being around, and your mother being off in her own world, how much did your parents really teach you about, like life and love and dealing with men and relationships and all of that?
Nothing,
Oh,
nothing other than what I saw. There was no communication directly to me on how to function, in relationships. Like I said, I just watched what my mother put up with, and yeah,
okay.
that was about it.
So think about, okay, so you're out of college or you're back at home, and at what point did you meet the narc guy that we're going to talk about today? How, where is he in your relationship lineup?
Um, he was much later down the line. He was right after. Well, was it right after? It was shortly after my mom passed, and I still had a strained relationship with my siblings. So yeah, I was kind of out on my own. I was living on my own, and yeah, and I was by myself, and he just kind of popped in there.
Don't think you're gonna get away with that kind of popped in there. We got to talk about. Okay, so that was So you probably are still kind of grieving, even though your relationship with your mother was a little strained. I mean, it's your mother, so you still, there's some grief involved there, and you're by yourself, and you meet this guy. So, what about him did you find interesting?
Um, I liked that he was different from the other guys I had met before him. For starters, he was a breath of fresh air from my relationship right before him. And I call him my rebound because I really had just gotten out of another relationship where I felt like I was a caregiver. The guy wasn't from this country, and so he just seemed like he had a real hard time functioning. And so I was always having to speak up for him and just take control and take leadership and stuff. And so when we broke up and I met this narc, he presented himself as somebody who was very take charge and had his own thing going on. He was an entrepreneur. And so he was really like a breath of fresh air, and somebody that I thought could finally take the reins and, let me be in the passenger seat.
So,
And
someone you
plus
didn't
he
have
was,
to mother and take care of, somebody who would be
yeah,
able to take care of
yeah,
you.
that was what I
Okay.
thought. And he was cool and charming, and I've always been kind of kind of socially awkward. And so I thought that I was very flattered that somebody that I thought was cool had taken a liking to me.
Okay. So when you met him, do you recall what you were looking for? Or were you just kind of not really focused on really too much of anything? Do you remember?
Um, I was just feeling lonely, and so I was happy that because when I was with the guy before him, I had given him all of my time and attention and stopped hanging out with friends, and so then he like up and disappeared, and so I was at the very start of trying to reform these relationships, but still, by myself all alone. And so then this narc entered the picture. And so I was like, okay, well, good. If I, hanging out with him, I'm not alone. So that was the main thing.
Well, let's dub him Joe for the purposes of this interview.
Okay.
We'll call him Joe. And so then when Mr. Joe starts talking, what did he say or do exactly that let him worm his way into your heart? And then as we, we'll be discussing too, into your house. What did he say? What did he do? How did he make you feel?
Well, that's a really frustrating part because he didn't do a whole lot. There was no wooing involved. I worked, was that like that swing shift? And so I got home in the evening, and when I was at work, I didn't really have time to be on my phone. So it wasn't like I was sitting around talking to him on the phone all day. I might get a text from him. And I remember after like the first couple of weeks, I asked him, why don't you call me? And he kind of gave me some kind of snappy remark. And so I took it to mean that, he was with somebody else. If you can't ever pick up a phone and call me. So I told him, okay, I'm cool. Then thank you for letting me know. We don't need to continue this anymore. And so after I said that via text, then he called me right away. And so we talked on the phone, I think probably for the first time. And so he was like, so you feel better now that we got a chance to talk? And I was like, sure, I guess I feel better. And so he picked me up and took me to get a bite to eat after work, and just kind of presented himself as somebody that, I don't know. God, I don't even know. It wasn't like I felt like, oh, he's so into me, and he just seemed real casual or cool with me, and so I gave that energy right back because this was all kind of new to me anyway. I hadn't had a lot of experience with guys, so I didn't even know what the protocol should be for, seem impressed or anything. So I just kind of gave back what he was giving to me, and yeah. And so, I guess with his persistence, though, I did have some form of communication with him every day. Then I was just like, okay, well, I guess this is the guy that I'm seeing. I talk to him every day in some fashion, and yeah.
So did you guys ever have like, what they call it in dating guys, like the talk, where you say, this
No.
our relationship and this what we gonna do, this how we gonna roll? No?
No.
No. So I guess, I don't know, that's what I hear, that a lot of people say that's old fashioned, and who does that anymore? And, you just start calling them your woman, your man, or whatever, and then that's it. But maybe I'm crazy because I want to have a conversation. I want
Well,
us to be on that
ideally,
page.
going forward, I would love to do that too, because I think that does eliminate the confusion and, giving somebody the opportunity to wiggle out and say, well, we never said we was together and all this stuff. So,
Right. See,
yeah.
that's how I think too. It's like, oh yes, you did. On March the 5th at 10:22 p.m., you did say that.
Right, right.
Okay, so this is going on. So how long before you guys, took to the next level where you started living together?
Um, well, we didn't live together until more recently. He did have a key though, and that was after about maybe a month of being physical with each other. And I needed to leave. And we were both just laying there in bed. So I said, well, I'm going to leave you my key to lock the door when you leave. And so when I came home, he obviously had left, and I just never asked him for the key back.
Oh, I
And
see.
yeah, and I just kind of liked the idea because, like I said, it was something new to me. I had never had anybody come and go in my house, and so I kind of liked the idea of playing house. And yeah, so I allowed him to keep my key, even though at the time, I mean, I knew it probably wasn't a smart idea to have somebody have their key that I have my key that fast. But he also struck me as a trustworthy person. Obviously, to be in my house, I didn't feel like he was a criminal or nothing, but I just got really good vibes from him. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna trust you to hang here. So,
Okay, well, that sounds pretty good. So when did things start going left? What happened?
um, we just always bumped heads. And I don't know if it was just him making an issue out of things or if I really just wasn't doing things the way he wanted them to, but we argued a lot. Because I think in the beginning when I first gave him my key, he was trying to stay here every night because I knew he was in between places. Excuse me. And so I think he tried to stay at my house, and it just we were just always bumping heads, and I couldn't even tell you the things that we were fighting about. I mean, I think it was about food. Like maybe if I didn't cook when he wanted me to, or I wasn't cooking what he wanted. If I would ask him about something and he didn't feel like I should be asking him that, like silly things like that, and he would just blow up. And so finally he said, "Oh, I can't stay here." Now he didn't get my key back, but he was just like, "I can't stay here. I'm gonna have to figure something else out." So that was really the start of our tumultuous relationship.
Okay, so when all that fighting was going on, how long had you been, seeing Mr. Joe at that point? Because you guys started off, it sounded like it was really nice, and then you started the battling started. So how long had you been
It
seeing him when that started?
it wasn't even it wasn't even 2 months in before we started having problems.
Oh,
Well, let me see. Wait a minute. I skipped a section. There was a point, and I think it was before I gave him my key. So maybe I didn't give him my key a month in. But he had asked me for money. And the one thing that my mother did say to me before she died was never give a man money because they'll lose respect for you. Um, and I never felt good about giving a man money anyway. I guess that was just my internal instinct telling me this is not a good look. So for him to, for us to be starting off so soon, and him to be asking me, "Oh, I need $100 or whatever," I'm looking at you like, what? And so
he was tripping.
and so I didn't. I told him no, and so he started to back off. And wait a minute. No, that was after. That was after he decided he couldn't stay with me. So I wasn't seeing him regularly anyway. But then when he came around to supposedly visit, and he asked me for money, and I told him no, then he would leave, and there would start to be more time in between when I would see him, and he might pop up and not come in the house, just kind of be outside. And I'm like, hey, what are you doing? And yeah, and so I realized that, you know, he was trying to run game, but I don't know. He was all I had at that moment, so I was just trying to work with what I had and trying to keep him around.
I see. All right. So, um, at what point then did you guys smooth things out enough so that he actually moved in, though?
Well, that was 7 years into it, or let me see, we're at 7, almost 8 years now. So then I guess that was about 5 years into it, because he stayed with me for 2 years. And during that time, I had accepted. We actually had the conversation about seeing other people. So I knew that he was seeing other people, and that was actually what prompted me to take my key back from him. And so we just were kind of casually seeing each other, not even really so much sexually, but throughout the years, we just were kind of maintaining this friendship, I guess. And he ended up in a relationship that was ending badly, and the woman had him arrested and took out a restraining order against him. So he, because they were living together, and I had suspected that they were, but he, of course, hid that from me as best he could until it blew up in his face. And so when it hit the fan, then he became honest about their relationship. And so now he was in trouble. And so I had to come to his aid as a friend and save him and bail him out of jail. And now he had no place to go. So I let him stay with me. And if I'm being honest, I let him stay with me hoping to see if, you know, now that we were really confined with each other and he had no place else to, you know, go if he got mad at me, if there was really something between us that could work. And so, you know, once again, playing house, I was hoping to see, you know, if we were really going to be compatible in a relationship. Yeah, and we weren't. So.
Yeah, as I would suspect, because Mr. Joe is a piece of work. Okay, so you two, over this period of time, now he started off by asking you about for $100, but what other kinds of things did he push you to give to him? Ways that he needed you to help him?
Whew, Lord. Access to my house. He knew he really had a good deal when he met me because I live alone in a house, not an apartment. I have a huge backyard, a huge garage and driveway space. He came along and took control of all of that. Like, my driveway was full of his cars. My garage was full of his stuff. He brought dogs to my house. And so, yeah, he took control of all of my space.
Wow. Okay, now let's switch gears and talk about narc abuse, because that's a problem. Narcissistic abuse is talked about a lot in psychiatric journals and online and different narc groups. Would you say during the 7 years that you were with this Mr. Joe person that you experienced any types of abuse from him? And we're looking at financial abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, or physical abuse?
Yes, well, I definitely have. I mean, pretty much all of them, but I would say it started with emotional abuse. I think he just kind of, my biggest problem was that, I exposed my weaknesses to him, and so he knew how to manipulate them. And so he would pick at me and make me feel inadequate, and make me feel like I wasn't doing things right, and criticize things that I did and demand more of me and tell me I wasn't doing enough. And then
So what
came
kind
the
of things would
financial.
you tell him, though, where, I mean, you don't have to go into a lot of detail, but, just like a highlight of some of the things that you told him were your weak points?
I told him my fear of dying alone.
Mm.
And he knew about my issues with my family, how I was distant from them. So I think that he already knew that I was isolated and lonely. And so, yeah, he was able to play on that and make me feel like if I didn't give him what he wanted when he wanted, that he would leave me alone. And, yeah. And
I
so
see.
I go ahead.
I was just saying, I see. Okay. So you were talking about some other types of abuse. What types of things did he do?
Well, he also financially took advantage of me. He would ask for my help, and at the time, because I've never been big on giving a man money, at the time he would make it seem like, he was good for it or he was going to pay me back. But he just kept taking and taking, or he might give me a little back and then leave me with the balance. I've put a car in my name for him. I've bailed him out of jail and then stuck with the bail bonds. And it's always started where he was being responsible with covering it, and then he just stuck me with it. I remember that the very first time when he finally got his own place, he asked me to help him find a dining room table. And so he was supposed to give me, so I paid for it on my credit card, and he was supposed to give me the money right back. Well, giving me the money right back turned into making payments, which turned into him saying, we're just going to consider this a gift from you to me. And he just refused to pay me back any more money for the dining room table. And yet somehow I still managed to, be doling out money. I didn't realize at the time that I was, spending money on him, because like I said, I thought that always thought he was going to pay me back. But
Right.
that was what ended up happening.
So what about the verbal abuse?
The verbal abuse, he would shout at me really badly, and it's a really sensitive area for me because I realized that it's something that I've always gone through. I've had little brothers that talk to me crazy and shout at me, and it would always leave me dumbfounded, like, you're my baby brother. Like, I'm like 8 years older than you. Why do you feel so comfortable talking to me like this? But it's been something that I've seen from back then when my siblings were children. And then going forward into relationships, I would end up in relationships where these men just talk to me crazy. And so I've never liked it, but it's always been something that's been present. And so you enter, Mr. Joe, and he'd get mad and he'd get to screaming and hollering at me at the top of his lungs. It doesn't matter how simple it is. It could be something like, not putting ketchup on his plate, and why didn't you get it? Did you know I like this on there, and da-da-da. and it would just startle me and scare me and stop me in my tracks. Or if I did, find the nerve to shout back, he would just shout louder or try to switch the rhetoric up to make me be wrong and, make me feel bad about the position that I was taking. And so it really, I mean, from where it started, it just really shrunk me down to where I almost couldn't fight for myself.
So this went on for years, off and on.
Yes, yes.
This guy.
Yeah, up until the time that I put him out. And I think right before I put him out, I had already been wrestling with myself with putting him out. And he shouted at me and I think tried to slam the bedroom door in my face. And it just kind of hit me like, okay, this is my house. You're not about to be slamming doors in my face in my house. And so I don't know.
No, that's good. Now, as far as emotional abuse, that's good. I mean, everybody has a bottom line. Some people just take longer. And, with the history that you have had, it's like you were already groomed by your parents for this type of relationship. So, I mean, as a mature adult now, you can identify it, which is the first step in healing, is to identify, what was going on. And then, you work to get yourself a support system in place. Some people, a psychologist, psychiatrist, I mean, good friends. I mean, somebody who's, people are going to help you get over it. And then as you learn how to stand up for yourself and set boundaries and, find your voice, it's like a 3-step process to getting out of these narky situations. So, you're on the path. So don't feel bad about, the fact that you might be walking a slower pace than what you think other people are walking, because you don't know what, they're not going to tell you their struggles, not in detail. That's what I admire so much
Right.
about the women here. Everybody is just like bearing their soul. And I'm being, my cousin and I are being very careful about the comments. I mean, everybody's really been good. We haven't really had to delete any, but, I just let everybody know. You try to say one critical thing about these women, you bounced up out of here, because these women have like courage that is like outside. I can't even imagine, having to go through this and then be willing to come and talk publicly about it. So, you got my support. But I do want to ask you, as part of the emotional abuse, this tends to be a common thread with these guys. Did any conversations come up where he compared you to other women, either past or present or future?
Oh yeah, all the time. He would talk about his baby mama and, oh, my baby mama, her chicken was always good, and, oh, my baby mama can make everything, and, oh, me and my baby mama, we used to do this and da da da. And I remember it. I didn't recognize that as a sign. It wasn't until I started to watch your videos that I learned what that meant. And I remember the first time I heard you say that, then I just like clicked to the times that it happened to me, like, oh my God, that's what he was doing. Because I definitely felt that way, that, it was making me feel bad and making me feel like, I had this standard that I had to match up to, and, I wasn't necessarily catching up to that. And so, yeah.
I'll tell you. Well, when he would talk to you like that or do those things to you, do you remember, how did you feel?
How did I feel? I felt very hurt, very sad, like I wasn't good enough. It made me hate him, and I felt very conflicted because it was just like, how could how could this person that I'm starting to hate and resent have this kind of effect on me? Because, you know, it's like the good sense of me was like, okay, if he's making you feel bad, then, you know, maybe he shouldn't be around. But at the same time, there was this feeling of wanting to be accepted and wanting to be, you know, appreciated and valued. And so I was really fighting to get that from him and to change what he thought about me.
So did you feel like one of the things that you were doing was trying to figure out what the magic potion was, the magic step to take to get him to treat you like he used to? So you keep trying to get past what's happening now and try to get things back on the track the way that they were before?
Yes, definitely. I found myself walking on eggshells, and I didn't realize I was doing it. Friends and family had to tell me that, you know, how I had changed and how, you know, I would jump up to his call or to his whenever he beckoned me. I would, you know, anything that he criticized, I would try to do better. He complained that Sunday dinner was too late, so I would try to get up in the morning and start cooking and let him see that I was cooking. And yeah, I just kept trying to do everything the way he wanted it to, or the way he wanted me to. And it wasn't until I realized that nothing ever would be right for him. It didn't matter how hard I tried or how much I did. There was always going to be something that he complained about, and there would never be a thank you or a good job at the end of anything that I did.
Mm-hmm. So he basically was just taking you back emotionally, back to your childhood and just reopening all those old wounds of trying and not being good enough and wanting to be, you know, acknowledged and to be thanked for what you did. The same feelings, right?
Yeah, I guess that's what it was.
Yeah, that's pretty much
Talking about it
it.
now, I'm like realizing it because I don't think I had made that connection before.
That's why you have me. Make those connections for you. So this guy, Mr. Joe, when after you know, he would say these things to you and you would start, you know, feeling these things and doubting yourself and feeling, how did he look? Did you ever look at his face? What expression did he have, or what did he say to you after he saw that you were hurt?
I didn't ever look in his face. Not with me, but I did see him when he dealt with an ex, because as I mentioned, he had been involved with somebody in between dealing with me. And he was telling her that he was going to leave her, and she was begging him not to. And she, you know, would be crying and begging and stuff, and no, we can work it out. And he was just eating it up and no, I'm going. And it was to the point of where it wasn't even serious for him anymore. It was just like a big joke to him. Like he just looked like he was enjoying it. And now that I think about it, there was one time that I did that too. In the beginning, when we were first going out, I think he had asked me for money or something, and I didn't give it to him. And so he was saying that he was he was done. And so he came and got his stuff out of my house and went in the car, and I followed him outside, and I got in the car in the passenger side. And I was sitting there like crying and basically pleading with him like, oh, really, you leave? Why are you leaving? Da, da, da. And he was sitting there smirking. And he like kind of tried to like shove my arm, like, okay, I gotta go. No, I don't have time for this. I don't. And I'm just sitting there crying, like, but why? Why are you leaving? Like, it's not that serious. Why are you leaving? He's just like, oh no, and just and I saw this like this little glimmer in his eye, or whatever, like he was eating it up. And I got out the car and went back in the house, and I was all sad and crying. And later that night, he called me, or he texted me and was like, fix me something to eat. I was like, what? And I didn't know what any of that meant, but, huh?
I said, that's how they do. That's how they exert their control. And the fact that you were so crying and all of that, and he's watching you with just gloating, just, feeling like he's just the shiznit of the world. He's got all this power. Look at what I can make her do. And I just hate them for that. But yeah, that's why I asked you that, to see, because that's a typical behavior pattern of them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This guy, whoo. All right. So you guys, fast forward, you're thinking about the relationship. What needs were you getting met, though? I'm hearing a lot of his needs getting met. What were you getting out of this deal?
I was looking for companionship, and friendship. And I used to say that, despite whatever happened between us or whatever, crap he was doing, I honestly believe that we were friends, because I just felt like we had a communication between us, where we could, laugh and joke or talk about serious stuff, like a lot of the same things. And then even when we fought, after the span of enough time, I'd even learned how to fight with him and know, okay, well, he's mad right now. He'll be fine in a couple of hours. And so I just felt like we got along enough that we were friends. And so I liked that, feeling like he was my friend, and feeling like he was the one person that I could always count on, which I didn't realize at first. But if I was in trouble, if I take public transportation, so if I felt unsafe riding transportation at night or coming home, I would call him. Living, in the hood, if I thought somebody was messing with me or giving me a problem, I would tell him. And even needing to get around or get stuff done, I would give it to him, and he would get it done. And so he started to feel like, the one person that I had on my team that would come through for me.
So then where did it go bad to where you ended up tossing him out? What kind of things started happening?
He just stopped being that, because I don't know what I wasn't doing for him anymore that made him like really start looking for somebody else to take my place. But he was actively looking to replace me. And I felt this, and I found this out. And so in his search for finding somebody else, he was neglecting me and doing less for me, and really being a real jerk, like he couldn't stand me. And so I said, well, I don't need this around anymore. This is not serving any purpose for me. It's just making me feel bad, and you just here taking up space. So, yeah, it was time for him to go.
Okay. So when did he leave willingly, easily? Was it a big fight? What happened? You just get his little stuff and put it in a kerchief. You know how they had a little hobo with the little kerchief on a stick and just go walking down the street?
Yeah, surprisingly, he did leave quietly. I was afraid it was going to be a whole big scene, but I don't think that he wanted to give me that satisfaction. He likes to try and seem unfazed and, talk his little crap on the way out the door, and then of course after the fact. but just tried to go peacefully and, to let me know that, oh, you not stopping nothing. I can go anywhere I want to go. So, yeah, he just went ahead and left.
I know you were saying, that he was actively looking for a replacement. That's what narcs do, because they just have to have somebody to, give them their narc supply. They just can't do without it. So you had kind of mentioned that you noticed, because, you guys being, quote, friends, you got access to stuff and you got to know a few things about him, about his personal life. So you were able to discover that, he had some similarities in the women that he was going after. Can you share those here?
Well, the thing I know about him is that his targets for women to utilize what they have. He likes to go for single mothers, and he has a tendency towards bigger women, women that might not be the most attractive women. So he can finesse his way into their home and feed them all these lines. Now, as far as stroking his ego with like having a woman that he actually claims, he definitely, goes after women that, he thinks are pretty women, and he loves girls that have something going on, professional women and, entrepreneurs or whatever, somebody that he can brag about. So he would keep a roster of both, try to find somebody that he could claim as a girlfriend and somebody that he could stay with if he needed to.
Mm. Oh, Slick Rick. We're going to change his name from Joe to Slick Rick. Okay, and that's a standard thing. That's what a lot of the dudes do. That's like in the player handbook. You guys go after the single moms and women who, kind of lonely and look, I don't know, vulnerable. The vulnerable women that look
Right.
vulnerable. That's the word I'm looking for. Okay, so what
Right.
does this dude look like? I mean, he must be like something to look at if he's getting all of these different women's attention, right? So how would you describe him?
Women love him. I wasn't taken by his looks because I don't know. Not that I don't see that or like men that are attractive, but I think that I have a natural like repellent to the sex appeal of Libra men because I know that they're trying to be sexy, and so it just repels me. But he is like, he's tall. He's about 6'6". And so people see him and they think he used to play basketball and, he's got a nice smile or whatever. But style-wise, if he wanted to try to mac or something, then he would dress himself up. But in general, he's not dressed up. He's super slim. And so me, myself, personally, I don't get it. But I do see, our women are like, oh, he's tall and handsome. And I'm like, I guess.
Yeah, they used to say, that's how I feel when people say that about my brothers, because I just see them as like, ew, are you kidding me right now? But all these girls used to be fawning all over them. It's like, well, they're so good looking. They're so handsome. They're so this and that. And I'm looking like, okay, what's wrong with your eyes? They're dummies.
Right.
They're complete fools,
Right.
all of them. What's wrong with you? So I think you have that. I know what you're talking about. That way you be scratching your head looking like, what?
Right.
What you talking about, Willis? Okay, so now you kicked him out, and it's been, you said 6 months. What's
Mhm.
been happening there that's making it so hard for you to cut ties with this guy completely? What kind of stuff's been happening?
Well, I haven't cut all of his access to me, so he still has a reason to linger around. I had really hoped, I guess I just keep underestimating my opponent, and trying to treat him like a normal person because, in my mind,
There's
I
nothing
mean,
normal about a narcissist.
and I have to accept that because in my mind, I'm thinking, you put a guy out, he's going, first of all, he's going to be all in his feelings and offended and everything. And so he's going to chalk it up and get his stuff and cut and move on to the next. But no, with this guy, as long as he has some use for me, he's sticking around. And I didn't expect that. I thought that, which was one of the reasons why it was hard for me to put him out, because I knew that when I put him out, in my mind, I wasn't ready to end everything. I just knew he needed to leave. And so I had to accept that, if I was putting him out, he might, feel some kind of way and be gone for good. But that wasn't what happened. He has decided to stick around. And so he still keeps dogs here and still has stuff here. And so now he just tries to stay on my good side so that I don't completely wake up and throw all of his stuff out and be done with him once and for all.
I see. So he's still feeling like he needs to stay on your good side so he can keep using you for those other access resources and stuff that he has around. That's what he's doing. That's his game. Okay. Knucklehead. All right. So when you think back about, about this, what do you think is the number one reason why it's so hard for you to put yourself first? Because I'm hearing a lot of sacrifices, on your part to help him and that benefit him, but not so much that he's, doing any of that for you back. So what do you think is the main reason why, you put him first?
In the beginning, it was me feeling needed. And I knew when I met him that I needed to work on myself, but I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what to do. And so when he came along with all these issues and needed my help, it was easy for me to put myself on the back burner and just focus on him, because I could say, well, I would work on me, but I got to do this for him, and he's asking me to do this, or somebody needs my help. So I was doing that, and so even now, I still don't really know what steps I should do for myself. And so I just kind of get put on the back burner because I don't really know what to do for myself. Or when I do try to do something for myself, then it just brings up all kind of other issues like feeling lonely or not feeling good enough to do the things that I want to do. So it's just kind of easier to lose myself in dealing with him than trying to figure out what I need to do for me to be better.
Okay. So it's kind of a distraction from yourself, from focusing on yourself. Okay. I could see that. I like to distract myself so I don't have to wash dishes. It's like similar. Yeah. But, we do that, procrastinate and distract ourselves. That's a human condition. Okay. So when you think about what you have learned about narcissists and the games that they've run and how they do people, if you were going to provide a warning to other young ladies about how to avoid this kind of guy, what would you say?
I would say don't ignore the warning signs. Don't ignore the voices that you have, your own, inclinations that you have that tells you something is not right. If you feel like something is moving too fast, or if the things that he is saying to you sound utterly ridiculous, and and just the way that you the way that they make you feel. I mean, I really liken it to, it's almost like a horror movie where you hear the music and you know something's about to happen. Like I think it's kind of like that. Like when you deal with the narcissist, like you hear the music, and so you know something about this scene is not right. And so, rather than being that crazy person that, goes in the room and investigate, that let that be your option to turn and run and, cut your losses.
Yeah, what was that growling sound as they head straight
Right.
into the room where the thing
Right.
is? Right. Yeah, I hear you. That's actually a good way. That's a good way to put it. Okay, so I think it just seems like a lot of young women though don't trust that voice in themselves. They second guess it, or they say,
Right.
well, they dismiss it. Say, yeah, but is what I hear a lot. Um,
Mhm.
what do you have any tips for help for how a woman can trust herself more? If you went through that, so do you have any ideas?
Um. Hmm. Ideas. I don't know. I mean, I know with me, I thought that I had a handle of it on it. I mean, there were signs that I noticed when it happened, and I thought that because I was aware that I was in control, and I wasn't, because again I underestimated my opponent, and so I feel like I kind of put myself in situations because I thought that I would be able to get myself out of them. And so, yeah, I just wouldn't take that chance. And also just knowing that, now that you have confirmed that, you do need to trust your own voice. That's just something that we have to get in the habit of doing. And notice when you do it, like with the simplest things, like going to the store, when you should have got something when you first saw it, and he's like, I knew I should have got that. I knew if I waited, that was gonna happen. If we start programming ourselves to do that stuff with, regular everyday things, then maybe we will start to notice the connection of how we can trust our own minds, and things will work out better. Because I think that sometimes, if you didn't get validation or something, then you don't feel like you know enough. Like, oh, this is, your first relationship, or you haven't seen enough and experienced enough to know enough. So like, oh, well, what do I know? Why would I, I'm just gonna try it. So yeah, if we just get into a habit of, I guess, validating ourselves and believing what we think and what we feel the first time, then when it comes to, these foolish men, it will already be in practice.
Exactly. Yeah, I think a lot of women, because that's what I'm noticing, the overriding theme is they like, that's the point at which I should have left. I keep hearing that. He did this or he said that, and that's the point that I should have, left him alone. And so they recognize it, but for some reason, didn't act on it. And so that's what
Right.
I was trying to get at, trying to figure out, well, what makes the women recognize that pivotal moment, but not take the steps to put what they're warning, what warning went through their head, to put it in action to save themselves. And it just seems like so many women then get into these situations, they're basically sacrificing themselves, their money, their bodies, their emotions, their hearts, everything is going to these narcs. And the women had a warning sign that where they could have at that moment saved themselves, but so many just ignore it. They just don't do it.
Right.
That's what I was trying to figure out
Right.
with the series, when women get to that point and they recognize it, because you guys are giving them lessons to help them recognize it. Okay, now you're going to recognize it because you just had 17 women tell you how to do it. Okay, so what's your excuse now? Why would you, continue down that path when 17 women done told you, don't do that, don't go there, there are monsters in the closet, don't open the door, and I think that's what's driving me crazy about this whole thing. So I'm glad um, you got the courage to come on and share your story. How do you think it's going to end, though? I'm curious. What do you think is going to be the final straw for you?
I wish I knew. That was the thing. That's the thing that frustrates me, because one of the things that I've learned about myself from this is that, two things. One, I feel like this is good for me, because it's forcing me to have to learn how to stand up for myself. Because as playing, mommy or big sister or whatever, I've always sacrificed myself to make other people happy. And so, that includes not saying something when I should say something, and just taking the abuse. And so from the beginning of this, I've waited for him to leave on his own. And I realized that that's not going to happen. It's really going to be up to me to finally put my foot down and speak up for myself. And the other thing is that it has to happen in its own time, because, as people tend to do in abusive relationships, taking the person back. I've always said I never wanted to be that person, and I've never been that person. If I'm done with you, I'm done. I don't go back to, oh, you need to get out. Okay, you can come back. Like, no. I take my time and be secure in my decision, so that when I make it, that's it. And so even from when I put him out of my house, I wrestled with it for months, so that when I finally did it, I knew that I was done, and that there would be nothing he could say or do that would make me say, okay, you can come back. So to be done with him, I just have to keep wrestling with myself, and I don't know that it will be one incident. It could be something silly, like it might be him, not taking the trash cans out on the curb when I asked him to, and, I come home from work and they still there. So, like, it might be that one day where I'm just like, you know what? I'm tired of you not putting the trash cans out when I ask you to. You need to get all your stuff out and just go. So, I don't know, but I just know that I just need to keep working with it so that it happens organically, and it's not something that I feel pressured to do from family or, embarrassed into doing, but just something that I'm really ready to do. And I just hope that I don't have to lose dearly before I get to that point.
Yeah, I hope so too. That would be sad. I wouldn't want
Mm-hmm.
that for you. Well, this has been very interesting. And once again, I want to thank you for, getting your nerve up to come in and talk to the ladies here. Be sure to check, they'll probably have questions for you, because once I put the video up, it'll probably go up Tuesday or Wednesday. And, check on the wall, because they'll, under the video, they tend to post questions. And if you, feel like it, you can answer them. Okay?
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Well, I wanted to say, two things. I know that some women are embarrassed by, the situation. And it's not, for me, it's not that I feel embarrassed about going through it. I just feel embarrassed for myself that I still haven't reached my breaking point to be done with it. But as far as the situation in itself, I know we all have things that we go through, and I just feel like that that going through this whole experience is a good thing to force you to work on the underlying issues that we may very well go through our whole lives pushing down and not dealing with. Because I can see how dealing with him, there's been elements of that type of relationship throughout my life.
Right.
And it's like they just kept building and building until I got to him. So until I deal with whatever the issue is that has allowed me to, have these kind of relationships throughout my life, then I might very well continue to have them. And so being in this situation really forces me to look at it and to deal with it so that I can unpack that and heal that and, go on and be productive and happy and not have this come up again.
That is very, very true. Thanks for tying that end up. That's very true. Well, anything else? Those are the two things?
Yes, I think that was it.
Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm kind of overwhelmed by this, to tell you the truth. That's why I'm sitting here looking all stupid. But it's like, I'm really proud of you. You did a good job. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.